everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast, Thursday, 27th of February, the final few days of February, which means we are getting ever closer to March and the Cheltenham Festival. And a reminder before we begin that there will be a Cheltenham Festival preview special from the SBK team coming next week, and looking forward to getting stuck into that and all the offers that SBK will be kindly providing. And with that in mind, we've got another free racing ACCA for this weekend's racing. 4 legs, you can opt in, of course, and we need to give a shout out for last weekend's winners before we move on to this weekend, and a mega shout out for the flat tipping on the synthetic surfaces. Outrage we hear from all those that are thinking about jump sources at the moment, but winners come in all shapes and sizes on this podcast. And that Saudi Cup, TC, was one of the best races I've ever witnessed. So jumps or flat fans amongst us, I implore you to watch that back if you missed the Saudi Cup last week. A romantic warrior, first time on dirt, shone, but was outgunned late on by TC's tip, Forever Young. And added with that, you put up Shin Emperor. So all in all, I know you've been talking about Riyadh. We know that you're there most weeks at the moment. But how good a weekend was that last weekend for you?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a fantastic day of racing here in Riyadh. Obviously, we had the Winter Derby winner back home as well. And that Saudi Cup was probably the best race I've ever seen live. I have had time to kind of lose the recency bias, but the fact that we had the best turf horse in the world face off against the best dirt horse in the world, they were both forwardly placed. We had changing of the leads, and then Forever Young came back. It was just a great race. I am still here, unfortunately, for another week. But yeah, it's not going to get any better than the Saudi Cup. That was one of the best races I've seen.
Yeah, and I think, look, we kind of want to see that come Cheltenham time, 2 horses at it and showing off their class. And a little plug for Ushba Tesoro. He came in with the placings at a good double-figure price. I think he went off at 25-1 in the end. But yeah, good tipping. Shin Emperor, Forever Young, Royal Champion, and a bit of Ushba Tesoro. So a bit more work for the jumpers, I think, this weekend. We need some jumps winners in the bag, and we've got 3 races to feature for you. Got good racing up in Scotland at Kelso. The feature will be the Morebattle Hurdle, and also Newbury hosts the Greatwood Gold Cup. But before that, we've got a good look at the Bet365 Handicap Hurdle, the 220 at Kelso to begin off, and a race filled with young improving handicappers, and Harry and Dan Skelton, who've got a big weekend on Saturday just to sort of emphasize their lead at the top of the Trainers' Championship. They've got the likes of Grey Dawning. They're really pot hunting at present to really keep that booster in, with Cheltenham very close in their minds, and they know that the likes of Willie Mullins is going to be playing big hands to maybe even scupper those chances of a championship this year. But Ace of Spades is the horse that they'll hope that will add to their funds, around 7-2. And this is a horse that's very much on the upgrade. You've got Mr. Bramley in there of the similar ilk, with the top weight, Bold Light for Lucinda Russell, the Scottish connections, and also Nikki Richards has got Nab Wood, and Lucinda Russell also got NXLN. So a race full of, as I mentioned, up and coming types. And TC, I'll come to you first. This is a race where it's difficult to sort of figure out who's got the best form on offer here. It's easy to sort of look around and see, that those that have been racing a bit sort of in the southern tracks, those that be racing up north as well. But with Ace of Spades, we know he's got the course form, and that recent win was very impressive.
Yeah, a few of these are appealing on paper, as you say, and maybe on first glance, it's hard to really differentiate between the horses that have good chances and the horses that are bigger prices, yet still seem to have plenty of upside. But when you dig a little bit deeper into the form, I think Ace of Spades is a clear standout in this contest. If you go 2 back, he beat the 120 rated Country Park and did so pretty well. The 3rd place finisher was Whimsy, who's rated 114. And the 4th place finisher in a 4-runner race has subsequently won twice. That form line looks strong. Then Dan Skelton stepped him up in trips, 2 miles, 6.5 furlongs at this venue, and he won decisively. It just looks like there's so much more upside with Ace of Spades than the rest. You don't really know where the limit is for him. I think it's probably the sky over this kind of trip. He's completely unexposed, but he's a smooth traveller, clearly stays very well. Plus, Dan Skelton's had 6 runners at Kelso so far this season, 3 winners, 50% strike rate, £1 level stakes profit of plus £3 and 3p. So not only does the horse really appeal, but also the trainer statistics appeal as well. He's going to be favourite in here. He may even be back between now, Thursday morning, and race time. But at the current price, I think Ace of Spades has to be the play.
Yeah, okay. It's still probably got juice in that rating, isn't there? A mark of 123 based on that. The two runs of late. This is the first go in a handicap. Ross, do you agree with TC? You strong on him?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with TC. I think it is pretty obvious that he's standout. I mean, using bumper form to judge hurdlers is often a dangerous sort of pursuit. But just when you look at this horse, he was second first time out to an Ollie Murphy horse called Wade Out, who actually won yesterday. He's rated 128. He's going to go up significantly for that, I think. He then beat Junker Dallier, also Ollie Murphy horse, 3 lengths or so. That horse 127. That gives a fairly good indication that this horse is around about capable of that, if not a little bit better. Hurdle debut was disappointing. He was only fourth. That was over 2 miles at Uttoxeter. Step Forward then was second at Exeter behind a horse called Ambient View. Ambient View hasn't really gone on. He's only rated 123, but he's been really unlucky this season. He's tipped up twice. He's thrown a race away. He's better than 123. Like TC said, Ace of Spades won really comfortably last time. 10 lengths back to Lunar Chief, who was in third. He's rated 112. Well, it was 10 lengths back. It could have been much, much more. So I think a mark of 123 is really more than workable. And I think we have to look at this, that Dan Skelton is going to really chase pots of money outside of the Cheltenham Festival, because he might well go to Cheltenham thinking he's got a couple lined up for the handicaps, but so could 3 or 4 other trainers. Going to Kelso, with the greatest respect to Northern Racing, he's probably got a bigger hand to play. So I think the fact he's sending some decent horses here is suggestive. Nab Wood was actually the one that pinged up on my tracker. I really loved him last year. He had some good form over 2 mile 6 round here. Hasn't really gone on. I was disappointed with his finishing effort when second at Ayr. He was quite well fancied last time out over 3 miles at Haydock, but he tipped up. I don't like the drop back and trip for him in the drying ground, but he's a horse I wouldn't give up on just yet. I would just throw one at a big price. The Sand Drinkwater train Fontana Elise. He's been very lightly raced. He's had 3 runs in 775 days, which tells its own story. But back in 2022, which I admit is back when I had a bit more hair than I've got now, he was a pretty useful horse in Cheltenham handicaps off marks of 117, 114. He's a horse with plenty of ability, but he needs good ground. His 3 runs in those 775 days have been on heavy and soft ground. It's just no good to him at all. He's down to 110. Ben Macy takes £7 off a mark of 10 stone 2. I sent a message to Sam Drinkwater to see how much of that Ben could claim, because he's quite a big boy. I'm not sure he has to claim all of it, but he's going to get a featherweight here. He is a useful horse. He is a 9-year-old now. His best days could be behind him with those injuries, but at 20 to 1, I have a little bit each on him as well.
Okay. So a lot of confidence behind Ace of Spades and a bit on Fontana Elise in that 220 at Kelso. That's where we're going to stay. We're going to go to the Morebattle Hurdle, the 23 runner affair, where there's a bonus on offer. If you to win this and you go on and win a race at Cheltenham, there's £100,000 up for grabs, and that was done in 2021 by Emmett Mullins, the shunter. I can't believe it was 4 years ago. Doesn't feel like only yesterday. And I think the last few horses that won this race have tried to do so and have at least competed at Cheltenham. So it's very much a good incentive. And so no surprise that Emmett Mullins has got his recent Leopardstown winner, the mare Vicio, in this race to give it a bit of a go. I did read that this wasn't necessarily the plan, but the plan was always Leopardstown. But they're not ones that team that are frightened of giving something like this as a bit of an adventure a go. So we'll see how she gets on with an elevated rating now. She won off 119. She's now 133. So that might be a bit of a sucker punch, but she's got a good race. This Favour and Fortune, who was a brilliant 4th in the now William Hill Trophy, used to be the Betfair Hurdle last time out for Alan King, is 5 to 1. You've got Tell Her the Name for the O'Neill team at 11 to 2. Cracking Rhapsody is 15 to 2. Petrol Head, who's been in good form since returning to the track, is 10 to 1 now with Neil Mulholland, an interesting switch. And Harry Durham's got Sluggers also off the back of 3 straight wins at 10 to 1. So I suppose there's good prices here, and there's one horse, and I know already that you two agree on. So it might be difficult for me to decide who gets the floor first. Potentially, maybe just offering this to TC based on the fact that he had a good weekend last weekend. So who do you like here for the Morebattle?
Yeah, I feel bad for Ross now. I'm going to steal his thunder. I'm with Tell Her the Name. I really like him in this spot. Look, he's always been highly regarded. Straight after his point, where he actually beat a now Paul Nicholls trainee who has won under rules, won that by 5 lengths. Then he finished a nose behind Django Bay, who's a subsequent Group 1 or Grade 1 placed individual, lost by a nose behind handstands a few weeks ago. He then smashed the 153 rated Lucky Place. Okay, he might not have been the 153 rated horse when that race happened, but he's still very talented for Nicky Henderson. He beat him by 14 lengths in a maiden hurdle. He lost his action in entry Grade 1, and then he came back and romped home at Huntingdon. Now, that was last year. 2 subsequent runs have seen him finish down the field, but he's been running in Grade 1s. And last time he was behind Sagino in just a race where he had no chance of winning. But I still thought he shaped pretty well in 4th. He gets to now run in a handicap off a mark of 137. This seems like the plan. He's second up off the layoff. To me, he's just exceptionally well handicapped for a team in Jonjo and AJ O'Neill, who I actually rate probably highly than most. I've been kind of putting Jonjo O'Neill as my trainer to follow over the last few years. His young stock has been getting better and better. And I think Tell Her the Name will be at the top of kind of the 5 and 6 year olds that he has in the barn right now. So I'm pretty strong on this horse. I think he's going to go very close. And at the current 6-1, I think that's a great price. You could even bet him each way, and I would be shocked if he was out of the 3 or 4. But I think he's got fantastic winning claims, and he definitely, in my opinion, deserves to be favourite.
Yeah, just looking through recent winners for the O'Neill team, been a bit of a quiet couple of weeks, but their Kelso strike rate this season, 2 from 2. Not too bad at all. Tell Her the Name. Yeah, that was probably my question. Where's he been for so long? Maybe that's a concern. Maybe there's something there. Maybe they've just had this plan. Maybe they just want the ground. Potentially a bit of everything. Ross, was that something that concerned you, or were you quite pleased to see that he's come off a bit of a break?
Yeah, I'm probably polar opposite on the O'Neill yard when it comes to judging them to TC. I just find them so baffling, and I almost wonder sometimes whether they try and be too clever for themselves at times and plot these horses to within an inch of their life. Had Keelan Woods on the podcast last year for the Cheltenham Festival, and he absolutely loved this horse, but he said good ground, good soft ground is absolutely essential for him. So I think that's probably why he's been missing. He's also not the easiest horse to train. Jonjo has done well with the horses he received from Ben Pauling when the owner left there. I'm just ticking off everything I've got on my notes that TC said. The only thing I could add is the Fighting Fifth form. If you use lump sum as a form line, which I think is a pretty reliable horse, Tell Her the Name was 6 lengths behind him. He's now rated 147 after that massive run in the Schweppes Betfair William Hill Trophy, whatever you call it, at Newbury when he finished second. That suggests a mark of 137 is well workable. Good ground will suit him. I'm completely with TC. Just because of the absence and the O'Neill yard, I'm going to split my stake. I'm not going to back him each way. I'll back him win, but I'll back another one win as well, which is Favour and Fortune off top weight. Won the Scottish Champion Hurdle off a mark of 138 on soft ground at Ayr. He doesn't want soft ground, he wants nice ground. He barely got that at all last year over hurdles. Bialy Stock was the runner-up for Willie Mullins, beaten a length and a quarter. He came down at the last at Punchestown in a decent handicap. He wasn't going to win behind Daddy Longlegs, but he was probably going to finish second. That gave the form a solid look. And then I thought that Favour and Fortune ran really well, again in the Schweppes Betfair William Hill Hurdle last time, finished 4th. Again, the ground was absolutely no good to him whatsoever. I think it shows this horse in a really strong light that he can still produce decent efforts off this mark on conditions that don't suit. Alan King's yard form you would question 10%, but then when you go through it, he's had 3 seconds from his last 10 runners. That would have been 4, but off the jury ran out at the last at Wetherby yesterday. He said that he's not been particularly happy with the horse's health and he's being very selective. I like that. It means you've got some degree of confidence that the ones that are running have at least passed, some checks. I just think he's way better than 140 when he gets on good ground. The one concern would be perhaps the undulating nature of the track, because he's run twice an undulating track and he's run poorly twice. But that came in the Grade 1 Supreme and the Champion Bumper, both at Cheltenham. That would be a pretty hard lens to judge him through, but it's just at the back of my head that maybe this is a horse that's better on a flat track.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And as you say, whether you think that this is a bit of a plan in place from the O'Neill team, or this is over complicating their thought process, I think the ground probably is key. Right, let's move on to another good looking handicap chase. That's the Greatwood, which is coming up at Newbury on Saturday. A race which it's very interesting to see those that have been pitched in with a view to their spring campaigns, really. And Can Do Kid, the one that Paul Nicholls is circled off the Grand National ever since he won at Newbury in the Coral Gold Cup, and the form has worked out extremely well indeed of that race. So you have to like what he could do, but potentially this is just a stepping stone to that Grand National attempt. You've got the likes of Iroko, Midnight River, Lamilo, Saint Seagal. A good race this. Ross, we'll head to you first. What did you make of the lineup here, and how difficult is it to know if this has been the plan for some of them, or if this is just a race for that might act as I said, a stepping stone to others?
Well, the weights are out now, aren't they, for the Cheltenham Festival? So, most people are not going to be sort of trying to hide their light. We should point out this is Oroko's second preference. He's also in the Premier Chase at Kelso, so he's more than likely to run there, I think, provided the ground wouldn't get too lively, I'd imagine, is what they're worried about. I like Vincenzo here for Sam Thomas. I'm a big fan of Doyen de Bar of Pawnee Robson's, and I opposed Vincenzo at Sandown last time with that horse and got it bang wrong. Vincenzo beaten 3.5 lengths, gave him £3, was comfortably the best horse throughout that race. His jumping was exceptional, stayed on really powerfully up the hill. Doyen de Bar since won really easily off that same mark of 128 at Ayr since. He's going to get a real big thump in the weights. I should think £7 plus. And just on a side note, if you haven't, go and watch I think his name is Eric Elliott, who's the owner of Doyen de Bar. His interview after that race is everything that racing should be about. It was brilliant. So I just think that's a really strong form line. Sam Thomas, you cannot knock his strike rate, 44%. And that was including with Steel Ally bumped off in the hurdle at Fontmell the other day. So he's just absolutely flying along, and he's clearly got something right, because we've spoken before that this can be a time of year when his form drops off. Something's changed. It's really working. His horses are running very well. They recruit really well, these young horses, the Walters and Sam Thomas team. I think this horse is a horse we'll be talking about a lot next year, into the likes of the December Gold Cup, the Paddy Power Gold Cup. I think he's got loads going for him. Steps up in trip. He's up £5, but he still gets a lovely racing weight of 10 stone 10. The ground is soft heavy at Newbury at the moment. They had a lot of rain yesterday, 16 mils, I think, yesterday, but it's going to dry through till Saturday. He won't mind whichever way the ground goes. He'll cope with soft, and if it does ride a little bit better, the fact he's going up in trip will help him. So he was first on my list, and I just wanted to mention Booster Bob each way as well at 20-1. You'd have to forgive a really poor run last time at Chepstow, but I'm just not sure the track suited him, and the ground was absolutely desperate. But prior to that, he was a length and a quarter behind Doyen de Bar at Aintree, staying on, giving him £3. If I like Vincenzo on the Doyen de Bar form line, I've got to give Booster Bob a shout. Ollie Murphy's still going along pretty well. He might take a leap of faith, but he is 20-1.
He certainly is. Sean Bowen, who's had a knock earlier this week, riding again today. That's Thursday. But obviously trying to keep him covered in cotton wool before the Cheltenham Festival. But riding at 10-2 for Booster Bob, as you say, a big prize at 20-1. Vincenzo at 8-1. So nice prices for the Greatwood Gold Cup. What takes your fancy, TC?
I have no strong opinion in this race, to be honest with you. Unlike Tell Her the Name in the previous The Morebattle that we covered, I don't really have a pick here. For podcast purposes, I will put up one at an each way price, and that is Saint Seagal, but I won't be having a bet in this race. This gelding has generally just been a nightmare to follow. He always takes money. He regularly underperforms, usually due to the fact he's too keen or he doesn't jump very well. He seemed to put everything right 2 starts ago over this course and distance when he won decisively. And then last time at Musselburgh, I thought he shaped very well to finish second. Maybe he has turned that corner and he can finally start to fulfill his potential, but I'm just unsure on him. He could still take a keen hold. He could still belt a few fences, and that's why I won't be playing in this race.
Okay, fine. We'll move on from the Greatwood Gold Cup and go into Naps and Next Best for this weekend. Got good racing up and down the country. Doncaster hosts the Grinthorpe Handicap Chase, and as I said, more on offer at Kelso and at Newbury. So back to TC after a successful weekend on the synthetic surfaces. Is that what you've got for us this weekend?
I did try, but no. We're sticking to the jumps and actually just sticking solely to Kelso for the Nap and Next Best. The Nap is going to come in the 110, and that is Helmvine, or Helmwine, however you want to pronounce the horse. This market is headed by Dan Skelton's Real Stone, a 10-year-old who won last time by making every single yard and never seeing another runner. This horse is fascinating because he never runs 2 races alike. He's only seen at his best when he dictates the fractions, goes miles clear, and nothing ever reels him in. I want to take him on. He's a short price, and I just don't think he's very reliable. I much prefer Alan King's runner, Hellwine, in here. He won a very competitive handicap hurdle at Standout last spring, beating a horse in Be Aware, who is highly touted for the Cheltenham Festival this year. He hasn't jumped brilliantly since moving to fences this season, but first time up at Warwick this campaign, he pushed a horse called Telepathique all the way. Now that horse is now rated £32 higher, suggesting that Helmvine actually performed really well to get as close as he did. Subsequently, he's been a little bit disappointing in a couple of races behind Vincenzo, but I think he's been shaping okay. And this event looks a lot weaker, so he's going to be my nap in the 110 for trainer Alan King. I think he's around 2-1, 15-8 at the time of recording. And the next best is a horse that we've already covered. That is Tell Her the Name, who runs in the 3:30 at Kelso, around 6-1, 11-2. I think that's a great price. You can bet him each way, but I'll be betting him to win. I think he's got fascinating claims off a mark of 137.
Okay, we've had a very comprehensive case for Tell Her the Name 3 times, I think, now. So we'll be seeing that price collapse soon. Tell Her the Name, Helmvine for the nap for TC. Ross, what else do you have for us?
So my nap is going to be Grey Dawning in the Premier Chase. I'm just hoping he'll be a half tidy price because of the presence of Oroko and the nature of the sound that surrounds Oroko, that he's the Grand National horse and etc. etc. He's £7 inferior on the weights to Grey Dawning, and I think Grey Dawning has probably still got a bit of an upside to his mark because he was very harshly critiqued for his performance in the King George, where I think we said on the podcast he was one of the first off our list because he had an absolute grueler in the Betfair Chase behind Royal Pagaille. Was a pretty quick turnaround to go to the King George. They were undecided whether they were going to go there as well, and then he made a mistake at the first or the second fence in the King George, put him on the back foot. It was run at such a fast tempo, he was never going to get back into it. So I'd happily put a line through that form. He's a horse that I've taken a while to warm to. He was really impressive in the Ryanair last year. The fact that they are prepared to skip Cheltenham altogether and go Kelso, Aintree, suggests that they really feel that this is a pot of £60,000 that they can pick up en route to Aintree in the 3 miler there, I guess. I think he'll take all the beating here. I don't see a scenario where Oroko can beat him unless it turns to an absolute deluge, which doesn't look likely to happen. I hope Oroko runs, because if he doesn't, he's going to be no sort of price whatsoever. That would be the one caveat, but I think he'll win the Premier Chase. And then my next bet's in the 3:15, the Grimthorpe at Doncaster. Richard Hobson trained Some Scope. I love this horse. The trainer loves this horse. He was second in this last year on absolutely desperate ground and was probably given a bit too much to do on that occasion by Gavin Sheehan, who gave them all a bit of a start. Had to do a lot of running to get into contention, and then the petrol just ran on empty the last 100 yards when he needed to go past a veteran of Kim Bailey's. It was then a little bit the same on his return at Cheltenham. For some reason, Gavin dropped him a long way out. He never really jumped, never picked the bridle up. Adam Wedge replaced him next time in the rehearsal chase at Newcastle, was much more like it, worked his way through the field, got his act together with his jumping and finished well. And then he absolutely bolted up in the Roland Merrick off a mark of 124. He got to the front about a furlong and a half too soon, pricked his ears in the closing stages. That affected his winning margin, but he was comfortably the best horse in that race. Went to Cheltenham last time, dropped back to 2 mile 4, and I think just chased the pace a bit too much, went too hard up front, got himself out of his comfort zone and actually pulled up. But he got £1 back for that, which I thought was quite generous. So he's off 127, only £3 higher than he won the Roland Merrick. Well, he'd have won the Roland Merrick easily off 127. Gavin Sheehan jumps back on. I hope he doesn't drop him out. That would be my one concern. I hope he rides him a little bit more forward like Charlie Maggs did last time. If he does, I think this horse is really well handicapped off this mark of 127 and could have quite an exciting spring.
Okay, we are all very much signed up members of the Richard Hobson fan club, but I might be taking you on in that race, so we'll see. For that race purposes, whether some scope or my selection, which will be my next bets, which we'll come to. But Grey Dawning for Ross in the Premier Chase and some scope in the Grimthorpe over at Doncaster. I'll just add to that, I'm back at Newbury in the 4:15, a horse Solar System who I've been following pretty religiously this season. I think he's really been part of the Philip Hobbs and Johnson White's team of horses that have just looked super progressive and have just really found their best in their various conditions. This horse is definitely that intermediate trip is at its best. He's bordering on probably getting slightly to a place where the handicapper's got a good say of him now, as he's probably a little bit difficult to judge, as he has to be quietly ridden. He only just does enough, and at Haydock last time was probably nearly lucky to keep the race, as there was a little bit of a bumping at the end, but there was no overturn afterwards from the stewards, and Mion Nolan was able to keep the race. But the handicapper has pushed him up £6, so he's going to have to find a little bit more. But with the way that he runs, you just never know how much more there is left to give. Let's hope that there still is a bit of juice in that rating of 118. He's got a nice racing weight for this. I think Newbury should suit him quite well. And as I said, a horse on the up for a team in very good order. And that's in the 4:15 at Newbury. Then I go back to the Grimthorpe, and I'm going to take Ross on with White Rhino, a horse who hasn't been seen since unseating at Kempton in the Grade 1 in the Quarto Star Novices Chase, where he never really got into the race. He was unseated at the third. Probably they might have just been going a little bit too quick for him. It was a big ask for him in that race, but he's clearly a horse that they think very highly of. He's been given a good break, potentially another one that's been waiting for the ground a little bit. Stepping up in trip again. He actually won at Cheltenham over hurdles over 3 miles. He's got a couple more furlongs to find. He's just a bit unexposed at this distance. It could be one that have plenty more to give should he stay this trip, as his pedigree seems to suggest he will do. And just very interested to see how White Rhino comes back after that break for the Oliver Greenall and Josh Guerrero team. So that is all of our Nap's Next Best selections for those 3 races where we are offering you that free racing ACCA. There are 4 legs, and hopefully we've got enough selections for you to opt in with that. Don't forget, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we have a Cheltenham Festival preview special coming next week, so make sure to set your reminders for that. Have a follow of this podcast, and it will come up for you automatically. And you can now also listen to the SBK Betting Podcast in the app itself. Very easy to do. You just need to make your way to the horse racing page and click play. If you're new to this podcast and you want to get involved with SBK, new users get £40 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. And make sure you head to SBK for lots of other offers and promotions throughout the weekend. A big thanks to TC and to Ross. Good luck for this weekend, and we'll see you next week.